Shall we start?
Yeah.
So, good evening, everyone. Once again, good evening to ma'am. So, I'll introduce today's speaker, second speaker of today's session, Dr. Nishitha J L, who completed BNYS from SATTVA University and MSc Yoga from SATTVA University. And she has also completed PG CSU, and she's working as a scientist in the Department of Integrative Medicine in Nimhans, Bangalore. Welcome you, ma'am, in this small platform with all of us.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, Bhavit. I'm very happy to be here with you all. The audience is basically BNY students from all over India, is it?
Yeah, BNY students.
So happy to have you all here. So today what we will be discussing is the concept of counseling from the perspective of yoga and naturopathy. So before we move ahead, uh, I would want you people to tell me why you want to counsel a patient. What is your aim and objective? Why do you want to counsel, or what is the importance of counseling in a therapy? Anybody can answer, just whatever you feel.
To understand the person completely, basically concentrate on the patient's lifestyle. So counseling is very much important.
Okay. So how do you think counseling is different from your case taking? So even when you take the case, you would ask about their personal habits, personal history.
Ma'am,
yes, in case history, we just okay.
With Bhumika, then Janvi. So one by one we'll go.
Yeah. Okay. In case history, what we do is we just ask what is the patient doing and what are his routine. Just we'll ask the routine, but in counseling, we not just ask the routine. We ask the complete schedule of the person.
Okay. So you can note down these points. We'll discuss at the end of the lecture. Okay. So we'll see how your perspective has changed after the talk. Okay.
Okay.
Ma'am, may I answer the same question?
Yes, please.
Ma'am, in case taking, we prefer as a doctor, we self prefer as a doctor, but in counseling, we become a friend of that patient, which is so friendly. In that case, it becomes so easy to know the patient very well, the problem of the patient.
Okay. Sir, there are a few answers also in the chat that we'll be discussing at the end of the session. Okay. So now when we will move ahead with this topic. So now in this session, what you will be learning is why counseling, what actually counseling is all about, how is guiding different from counseling, and the counseling on the perspective of from the philosophy of yoga. So the personality types from the yoga perspective, then the from the perspective of gunas and doshas, and then the concept of a, u, and ma, or om, generally referred to as, and then trying to relate it with the Panchakosha model that we generally use to explain the pathophysiology of any illness according to yoga. Okay, so why are we looking forward to counseling? Because counseling, see, any therapeutic any therapy otherwise should always, especially the Ayush systems, have the holistic approach where they see the individual from a holistic perspective. That means they consider the physical, the physiological, the mental, and then their socio-occupational health respectively. So why is it important for us to understand a person in these dimensions is because only when you understand a person and let him identify his own potential in terms of uh, his abilities or his potential, only then you can say that the person has gained his well-being or enhanced health that would lead to his better socio-occupational functioning. So generally, I would want to ask you all, when you are in stress or any fear or in a situation that is very demanding for you, how do you respond? One of you can unmute and you can give answers. A few of you can answer this question. You can unmute yourself and answer. How do you respond to a challenging situation out of the four given?
Ma'am, we avoid it or keep ourselves busy.
So
Or
you avoid it or keep yourself busy. Okay. Thanks, Kriti. Anybody else? Okay, so Mukhya wants to control her emotions. Okay, so anybody else?
Hello,
Man,
ma'am.
if it is not challenging, then I might face it. Like, if it's not a fear, but if it's fear, then it mostly we all learn about away from it.
You'll run away from it. Okay, so it's again denial. Yeah. So most of us are opting either keeping busy or denial. That is, you kind of run away from the situation. Okay. So this is generally how we all respond to stress. And what happens is when you do this, your physiology basically still responds to it, and it keeps secreting these stress hormones. It kind of puts an accelerator onto your sympathetic nervous system, and then it kind of creates an imbalance in the entire physiology, and this keeps on happening, and then what happens is, at a long run, your physiology will not be able to return to the baseline. Rather, it keeps building up, and then it kind of um, goes over the limit of it correcting through natural homeostasis, and it leads to some kind of illness. So what yoga how yoga prescribes uh, us to respond to a situation that is challenging is either, there are four ways. Okay, so these concepts have been taken from Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita basically propagates four streams of yoga, that is Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and then Raj Yoga. So the basic questioning of asking who I am, and then is basically Jnana Yoga, and giving so much without asking in return is again Karma Yoga. And when you surrender to some high principle in your life and do everything in a one pointed devotion towards that higher principle in life, that is Bhakti Yoga. And then again, when you use your willpower and try using your willpower, you're trying to build yourself, that is Raj Yoga, through the stream of practice. So all of these naturally aim at, again, calming your mind. Again, we'll come to when at the end of the presentation, I will be telling you why the mind is a very important part. So as we all are BNYs, we know that the all pathophysiology, we deduce it down to Panchakosha module. In the Panchakosha module, what do we say? That the illness basically rises from the Manomaya Kosha, which is nothing but the patterns of your thinking, your thoughts, and your mind. So this is why it stands important here. Now, what are the yogic coping strategies? Okay, so they are Raja Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. So you can also classify the personalities based on the dominance of yoga they prefer. Okay, so the Raja Yogi will have a very strong willpower and will be, when once determined, he'll be able to achieve what he wants to achieve. Bhakti Yoga is about a path where a person identifies a goal, I mean a higher principle in the life. Like it can be anything, it could be God, it could be some goal in his life where he's really devoted to the goal and he wants to do it. And the Karma Yoga is basically just relentless service is not in this it's not about just doing service which is meaningless, but really wherever needed one puts his heart and then do the services, Karma Yoga. And Jnana Yoga comes from basic questioning each and everything with the logic, is Jnana Yoga. So these are the 4 different paths according to which the people can be categorized to give what strategy or what therapeutic module can be given to a person later. The other aspect is the 3 attributes of your mind, that is tamas, sattva, and rajas. So basically, the mind has these 3 dimensions that it can vary. So it is like x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. So it has 3 axes on which it can vary. So basically, sattva is something that is, a person who is flexible, not very judgmental. We call that person to be sattvic, and he's generally most of the time very tranquil, and he's very aware. He keeps awareness in detail, and he's always in the present, trying to be optimistic with whatever happens in his life. And then he has proper discrimination on what is correct, what is wrong. So that is sattva. So from there, a person could either deviate to rajas or tamas. So rajas is it's like they're less rigid, and they're very fast, impulsive, and then they're like very extrovert. They're not very much aware. They kind of have that bird eye awareness. They just see everything from the top and come into conclusions. And they are a person who generally will get angry faster, they get anxious, they get frustrated. So their emotions are very volatile. And then they're always very passionate about doing something. They have higher goals. They want something great to be established by them in the world. So that kind of personalities come under Rajasic kind of personalities. Then on the other side, we have tamas. So in tamasic personalities, so they are kind of dull. They kind of are very lethargic. They don't care to be aware of anything. They're very dull, sluggish. They're very like prone to depression, no interest in doing things. And then whatever they do comes out because there is a threat. If there is no threat, they'll just lie like a vegetable. So they are tamasic. So with these attributes of mind, again, you can categorize personalities into 3. So what would you say about Hitler? He was a tamasic personality. So okay, so tamas already also has indolence, and then they're not sensitive to anything. See, killing so many people without any moral values. Rajasic and Sattvic both have values. Okay, tamasic are the people who do not care of what happens. They lack awareness. They don't. They're not even sensitive about it. People die in front of them. They don't care. So those kind of personalities are tamasic. So Virat Kohli is Rajasic. So he has, yes, he wants to achieve. He wants 100 runs in every, every match he plays. So that kind of passion that he carries to take India forward is Rajasic personality of his. And obviously, APJ Abdul Kalam ji is a sattvic kind of personality, maintaining a simple, calm temperament, no matter what he went through. So, based on these attributes, again, the way you counsel the patient would change. So, what yogic counseling aims at is to bring a balance in the gunas. So, how the evolution will take place? It is not that, okay, I want you to understand one thing is you're not identifying any guna to be good or bad. See, all of us have phases of it. Okay, so still the person who is sattvic is still not at the highest level of the growth, because he's still identifying himself to be sattvic. So again, there is inflexibility when you're identifying only with one guna. So ideal state of being is to have detachment to all the three gunas and just observe the way the gunas are fluctuating in an individual. So sometimes after a high rajas, like after you give an examination, for examination, to pass an examination or to excel or to top in your examinations, you'll need rajas, you'll need passion, you'll need rajas. But then after the state of rajas, obviously to recoup, the body will go under the state of tamas for a while. So that is absolutely okay. You cannot be judging that tamas is bad, so you keep on doing something, keeping yourself busy. No. So all the three states are basically that are naturally happening in everybody. But the only thing is the dominance of the guna is important. So from tamas, one has to take a step to go to the rajasic, from rajas to sattva, and from sattva to gunatita. So it doesn't stop at sattva. You have to transcend beyond to gunatita. Even your counseling should be at it should be aiming this. You should teach this to the patient also. So the basis of gunas and doshas. So from the gunas, you can see how the doshas are coming up. So basically, sattva is out of the picture because it is already a state of balance. Now, from the Panchamahabhutas that we generally have in all the systems of medicine, and now we are especially dealing with the naturopathy and yoga. So we have here the Panchamahabhutas at the Annamaya level, that is your physical body. So when the space and air come together, they give rise to vata. The fire and water give rise to pitta, and the water and the earth give rise to kapha. So now the tamas is completely, you can see that the tamas is, most of it is coming towards the kapha part. And there is only a little that is entering the pitta side. So it is more about being being identified with dullness, inactivity, less interest. But when you see rajas, it is more towards vata and the pitta. So when you see the nature of the air is fast moving, it takes things along with it. When especially a cyclone comes or a tufan comes, you can see that it takes away everything that comes in its way. So there is so much of dynamicity in that. Even the fire is again immense activity that happens when the air and fire come together. It gives rise to rajas at the level of your mind, that is your manomaya kosha. So this is the basis that I want you to understand before we deal with the principles of yogic counseling. So in yoga, we have these 4 different personalities that has been given in Bhagavad Gita. So I don't want you to mistake this division to kind of kind of be a caste system or kind of racism or kind of dividing population. No, this is basically about understanding how the attitude of a person could be. So in Bhagavad Gita, it was basically mentioned in such a way that if a person could identify which category he belonged to, it was easy for him to identify on what occupation he could take up in his life, and also take up that stream of yoga that could suit his personality type, and then hence lead to the spiritual growth of that person. So that was the aim on which these 4 categories were listed in Bhagavad Gita. So the 4 major types are the Brahmana. So the Brahmana personality type is generally identified with intellectual curiosity, the openness to experience. So they are very open to any kind of experience, and they're the Sattvic. And for them, the Gnana Yoga is the preferred path of yoga, and that could, they can take up that path of yoga with least resistance, hence progress fast in their spiritual growth. The next comes the Vaishya, that these people are very organized. They have daily plans. They have a goal for achieving. They're very organized kind of personalities, and these people are very conscientious. So again, there are big 5 personalities, out of which I've just written this Vaishya personalities are generally very conscientious. That means they're very aware of how their actions would lead. Okay. So these people are generally identified with Rajosattva. So they have Rajas and Sattva, but the dominance would be of Rajas. And for them, the yoga path that would be convenient for them is Raja Yoga, because they're very organized, they have good willpower. For them to take up Raja Yoga is ideal. For Kshatriya, so Kshatriya are basically people who are ruling the kingdoms. So they are full of energy, assertiveness, and they always need some kind of stimulation. And for they are personalities that are relating to extraversion on the big 5 personalities, and they are again Rajasic personalities. And for them, Karma Yoga would be the ideal one to selflessly grow. So you could see, right, when you have to relate this. Previously, in the olden days, kings were always into the service. They kind of, even if they possess the kingdom, but whatever the activity they used to do was to kind of protect their kingdom, protect their people. So that kind of karma yoga traits for Kshatriya. The Shudra are people who are very friendly, compassionate, who love serving. So these people relate to the trait of agreeableness, and these people characterized with Tamosattva. So they have tamas as well as sattva. So sattva and they are almost in a balance, and for them, bhakti yoga is the ideal way of evolution. So because of that friendly nature and the compassionate attitude, and the attitude of wanting to serve others, they kind of, when they get a higher principle in life where they can devote themselves, they flourish to their fullest potential. So ideally, when a patient comes to you, you need to be aware of what trait the person is carrying, and according to that, you give them what yoga and naturopathy advices you think are will be able to transcend them from tamas to rajas, rajas to sattva, and from sattva to guna. So these are the basic recommendations in the lifestyle that we generally prescribe. So the Rajasic personalities, so me being at Nimhan, so I am talking in terms of mental illnesses, but it could also be used in other lifestyle disorders based upon the kind of personality or the trait the person is carrying. So for the Rajasic personality, you want him to go to Sattva. So you'll give him sattvic diet, you will give him forward bending. Forward bending basically, makes you more humble. That is the bodily posture. You kind of introduce relaxing postures. You give them cooling pranayama, left nostril pranayama. You teach them special sleep techniques, uh, advanced meditative techniques, and you give them more of Makara chanting. Makara chanting will enable a person to calm down, and more relaxing practices rather than stimulating practices. On the other side, tamasic, you'll have an exact reverse of what you want to do for rajas. So you'll give them a little rajasic diet, adding up spices to their diet, um, and then you teach them more back bending asanas, dynamic asanas. Uh, Back bending asanas also help a person to open up their personality. You give them dynamic, fast breathing practices, kriyas, kapalabhati, right nostril breathing, bhastrika, practices that can energize the system. And you'll give loud chantings like akara. You give them more stimulation and less relaxation. So also this is a basic dietary prescription that we already do generally for the patients. So these are the tamasic. Tamasic diet has basically it is heavy, dull, tasteless, stale. So you can see that fermented cheeses, all of that come under tamasic diet. Uh, and then Rajasic diet is hot, pungent, salty. They're very strong in taste. Such kind of diet comes under Rajasic diet, and Sattvic diet are again, they're very fresh fruits and vegetables, sweet to eat. They still contain the natural oil in them, and they're very easy to digest. That kind of prescription you generally give. Uh, so basically, for Rajasic personality, you give sattvic diet, and then for the tamasic people, you give Rajasic diet. So we don't prescribe tamasic diet at all in yoga and naturopathy. So you forget it. It is only for you to understand on what to avoid. The other way of looking up personality is vrittis. From Patanjali Yoga Sutras, this concept has been taken where the consciousness is identified in the state of your mind. The state of your mind is identified in 5 dimensions. The one is pramana, that you see what it is. Viparyaya is you misinterpret. Vikalpa is where there is no object but you imagine. And the next is nidra, where there is no object, no imagination. It is just sleep, a deep sleep. And then smriti is the memory of the past events. So these are the major 5 vrittis that Maharshi Patanjali has described in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So it is important for us also to assess the level of each vritti a person is carrying in him. So especially it comes into a limelight when it is uh, disorders like hypertension, where there are chronic stresses that lead to that kind of elevated high blood pressure. So wherever you see that you can explain a disease through the panchakosha model, and you can see that the disease is manifesting because of some seed in the mind. That is any disease that is psychosomatic. this principle applies. You can assess what vritti is dominant and try to correct it. So ideally, you need to bring everything to pramana. Smriti should, indulging too much into past events should come to the present. Nidra, Nidra is again the state of tamas. You need to bring them to pramana. Vikalpa, where there is too much of imagination that is creating so much stress, should come to pramana. Viparyaya is again misinterpretation, that again should come to pramana. So, in Smriti, especially, where there is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, where there was some sexual assault or anything like that, that keeps pondering on your uh, present state of mind because of the some event that was really disturbing. So vikalpa again, things like hallucinations come under vikalpa. Again, viparyaya are a state of delusions. We also do it in day-to-day life. You don't even have to consider it to be an illness. So viparyaya, a person kind of tells you something, you interpret something else, and then the output is something. So that misinterpretation is viparyaya. So ideally, you need to train the patient who has come to you to elevate to the state of pramana. And for that, you need to give them a yoga and naturopathy based lifestyle. So this is one more important step. I think Dr. Havens also has covered this, where you kind of, to cope up stress, you use friendliness, being happy, showing compassion towards the miserable, and to showing joy towards people who are in pain, to kind of show them stability for people who are non-virtuous. So this is the summary of whatever I spoke till now, where you can see that ideally the Pancha Mahabhutas that we talk in naturopathy, as well as in yoga, when you see them in different terms, like, space and air collate to become Vata. And Vata is nothing but, it carries Rajosattva, and then it relates to the state of wakefulness. And a person who has these characteristics will be cognitively very flexible. They'll be open to ideas, and for them there'll be less resistance to change. Okay, so these people, you will find it easy to counsel these kind of patients. People who are pitta predominant, and they it's like the state of consciousness that would relate to it is dream, because they are very ambitious, they have goals, they have dreams. So these kind of personalities have moderate cognitive flexibility and also moderate resistance to change in terms of lifestyle advices. But the last category, earth, is more of earth is more of tamas. That means more drowsiness and sleep. They're very less flexible but very resistant. So these category of people are very difficult to bring a change in. So now what our yogic counseling will aim at? It is about, you basically in counseling. So this is what I wanted to tell on how counseling basically is different from guidance. So guidance is where you come to me seeking a solution. Okay, so I give you a advice. Okay, but in counseling, you don't give them an advice. Rather, you become a mirror where a person is telling what he is and reflecting himself in you. So it is very necessary that you become completely non-judgmental and give them a platform where they can selflessly reflect themselves and understand what is happening. You can always see that when you talk and when you tell whatever you have understood or whatever you're going through, you get better clarity on it. So they just tell you whatever is happening, and you give them a certain kind of understanding on what they're going. So they give you a picture. You're just trying to, brush up the mirror and give a clear picture of what they should see. And then they themselves get an insight. If they're not, you just give them a platform, that is the understanding, where they will understand what needs to be done, and then the change happens. You can always see this, that when you give an advice, it never helps the patient, because it still is an external thing that it is difficult for them to imbibe. When you give an open platform where they just reflect, and you give them a clear understanding about it, automatically a solution comes up, and that leads to the change. So the basic principles that you need to do is, first, do not counsel anybody and everybody. Only the people who seek your guidance, they come to you, only then you counsel that patient. You cannot be just telling philosophies to anybody and everybody and confuse them. Only people coming to you for guidance in some perspective, you counsel them. Second is, you listen to the person with a very calm mind, showing interest without interfering. Highlight it. It is very important. You should not cross question. You cannot confront the patient. You just listen, but show that you're listening. You should be active in your expressions, but not with your words. Third is, do not judge. Your facial expression should be as if you should not, if the person is saying that he smokes some 10 cigarettes, you cannot tell, oh, you cannot give that kind of expressions on your face. You should be very neutral. Then the third one is, understand the personality. So I've told you the concepts of how we see a person in different dimensions. So it is important for you to understand a personality and the capacity of the subject and give them an option. Okay, so you tell them an understanding. You don't give them the direction. Direction is their choice. And then you should also tell them that, you should not be telling that tamas is bad, rajas is better, tamas, sattva is the best, shudra is bad, brahmana is good, nothing like that. Even we see everything on a same platform. Even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that all the paths of yoga are equally good for Krishna. So you should also emphasize this point that everything is good. Once you keep a path over the other, ideally any person would choose the path which is higher. So that is very important. And then you should not expect anything from the patient. Okay, you should give the freedom to the subject to decide whatever he wants. Okay, and then you need to connect to the entire personality of the patient rather than to a single part of it. Okay, if the person is narrating to a story, you cannot identify the person only to that part of the story. Oh, he did like this, he did like that, his mind was like that. You cannot be only particularly aiming at one part of his life or one part of the personality of that person. Should see it in the whole, at all the 5 layers of existence. And then it is very important to understand a person according to his gunas, and also prescribe specific yoga and naturopathy techniques and coping skills for a personality to evolve or come out of that situation. And also it is important while counseling, or when you are trying to give a clear picture of what is happening, you should address the imbalances at each layer in the Panchkosha while you're telling the patient, as well as you give them the practices that can correct these imbalances at each kosha. So at the end, the goals of counseling should be you giving a support. So it will be psycho-educational guidance. That is when you're trying to give a whole clear picture about what the person is going through. And then you, again, you kind of give him an insight on the adjustment that could be done to overcome the situation. Then in the crisis, how do you cope? So crisis intervention and symptom amelioration, they are close to each other, where when they're really put into a stressful situation, how do they cope up? So that should be the ultimate aim of counseling. So problem solving, decision making, on what basis should they do it? You should educate the patient, insight and understanding that could lead to self-actualization. That is nothing but realizing one's own potential. Sometimes a person might have immense potential in him, but there is a layer of covering that is kind of covering his potential. That could be fear, anxiety, frustration, anger, whatever it is. You try to actually, remove that covering through giving good insight and understanding to the patient. That could lead to self-actualization. And the ultimate purpose is to evolve spiritually, that is transcendental experience. So some basic principles of counseling is, so as I already told, first of all, you see the patient with the holistic view. Second thing, each individual is different. So you don't try to give the same advice that you had given to the previous individual. So it should change. It should change. You cannot say that diabetes, I am giving you so and so treatment. No, it cannot be in that way. That would be a method which an allopath would use to treat a disease. For us, it is more important to evaluate a person on the basis of Panchamahabhutas, three doshas, and three gunas. And it is not that whatever it is, whatever the patient is saying, it doesn't mean that you approve everything, but you still should accept the person as it is. And when you're giving a clear understanding without any confrontation, very carefully, you should put across to the person on bringing an insight to what should not be in his behavior. So the other thing, the second principle is not judging the individual. And the very important principle is counseling is all about thinking with the patient and not for the patient. So you're coming into the shoes of the patient and thinking along with the patient rather than thinking for the patient from a third eye perspective. And you should always remember this, that the decision making to the end is only the client. So it should not be discouraging that you do the entire laborious process, but then at the end, patient has the choice. Even if he disagrees, you should be absolutely accepting that fact and not be harsh to your patient on the next visit. Okay. So thank you. So the major principles I want you to understand is these are the major principles that you should be remembering while you counsel a patient. These are very important. And this is what we had been using in our clinical setup also. And it is really useful when you actually assess a person and his problem on the basis of the 4 streams of yoga, the Trigunas and Tridoshas, and more latently Panchamahabhutas. Then the states of your mind, that is the vrittis, what is the extent of vritti, each vritti a person is carrying, and you try to help the person to evolve to the state of pramana. And then ultimately understand everything through the perspective of Panchakoshas. Okay. So now if there are any confusions regarding any of the concepts, you can either put it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask.
Ma'am,
Ma'am, we will
excuse
take
me, ma'am.
these questions
Yes.
in chat box also later. First, we'll ask unmute and then look at the question. Yes, Kriti, you can go on.
Ma'am, as you have told that if someone is tamas, then we should recommend them rajas diet. Ma'am, it is oily and spicy, so it can harm also. Why not to suggest them sattvic diet?
See, okay. So when you are in first standard, if I give you the books of fifth standard, how would you feel? So that is what will happen to a person who is tamasic. You directly tell them sattva. They will again never come back to you because for them it is very difficult to identify themselves to come to the state of sattva. So it is always slow and gradual. So first is you try to stimulate the person. Without stimulating the person, if you're trying to bring in sattva, what happens is you'll make them more tamasic. See, in tamas, that person is already not interested in anything. There is a lack of interest. There is no much awareness and stuff like that. So in sattva, again, there's a principle of being non-judgmental, and then there is also a principle where tranquility or being equanimous in the states of joy as well as misery. So now what a tamasic personality would ultimately think is, now I should not be joyful also, not sorrowful also, and so it is nothing but not responding to anything. Again, it brings them to the state of lack of interest, indolence, lethargy. That again sets in. So what we need to do is first stimulate, then bring them to a state. So it's basically like even in the transformation in the terms of Panch Mahabhutas also. So ultimately the earth and water combination should get some fire into it. Yeah, so only then there is a balance. Otherwise it will still not be it should be transition. So after that a fire comes, then the air comes, only then the space comes. You cannot directly get to the other element directly. So even in acupuncture we have that constructive cycle, right, where one takes the energy from the other. So like that, even here we use the same method to evolve.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Ma'am, we'll take the chat box question number.
So yeah, initially there was a confusion on what is the difference between case taking and counseling. So case taking, you generally take a case on what a person would tell about himself. Yeah. But in yogic counseling, from the perspective of how you see the patient. So it is more about the how you observe the patient. See, one is the subjective experience, what the person is telling, and one is you objectively observe what the patient is going through. So you see his physique, try to assess their doshas, the way he's explaining each situation, you try to analyze their gunas. So all of this comes in the perspective of counseling, which doesn't come in case taking. So, Bhavit, will you be reading out the questions or should I?
Yeah. No, I'll read the questions with the names. So from the Sushmita Roy, to know about the mental status of patient, that was the answer about counseling and difference.
Yeah, okay.
From the Pragati, counseling can be direct or indirect. We also go through the Panch Koshas, Guna and Adis and Vintis. Okay. So
Sorry,
these
I
are
didn't
the like.
understand the question.
It's not a question. They were writing the answers what you asked.
Acha. Okay.
I'll read the question.
Correct. Very good. Yes, Pragati. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
From Nehal, how should we convey our knowledge to their understanding, for example, to a diplomat or a businessman?
How do you convey your knowledge? I didn't get the question. Is it about how do you,
Counsel that person.
so that is what I want you to understand, that in counseling, you're not putting across what you know or what your knowledge is about, the extent of your knowledge. It's basically about, now a person comes, a businessman comes, tells you his problem, that he's not able to decide on something, or he has issues with his family or whatever. So you analyze on what is happening to the state of his gunas, what is happening to the state of his mind, what is happening at different layers of his existence, that is panchakoshas, this different states of consciousness, and then you try to give him a solution to help him decide it better. Or if he's stuck with some situation, you could get a story from our ancient texts, and you can just tell him, like how in the whole Bhagavad Gita, Krishna was kind of giving Arjuna the insight. And if you have read the text Yoga Vasishta, in that Yoga Vasishta, the sage Vasishta, he was demonstrating each life principle to Rama in form of short stories. So like that, you can just give a better clarity to the subject, and you should not be showing the level of your education and understanding to the. That is not the goal. It is about just giving a clear picture of what that person is going through, and then give the complete freedom for them to decide on what they have to take. So the next question by Mr. X is, can you recommend any book for learning about these concepts? Yes. So now, probably in the next 2-3 months, we are publishing a book that is a yoga manual for all the disorders, where there is an exclusive chapter on yoga-based counseling that will be releasing in another 3-4 months. So I could put across to Bhavit so that he can intimate that to you all, and it can be accessed.
Next question will be from Pragati. Ma'am, please tell the difference between yogic counseling and modern psychology. What are the points that are common in both, and what's the difference in both counseling?
See, the common points between both are, even modern psychology counseling says that you still don't give them an advice. You keep it open. They also believe in the principle where you, but their analysis is not this deep, that they try seeing the person from very subtler aspects of Panchamahabhutas to the grossest of your physical body, the appearance in terms of doshas. They don't have this kind of very intricate system of analysis, uh, but their principles are somehow the same, uh, like being non-judgmental, not confronting the patient, trying to give the space to the patient where he can reflect himself in you, uh, empathizing with the patient, trying to put yourself into the patient's position and then analyze the situation. All these principles are also there in modern psychology, but yogic psychology is the most ancient and the intricate system of uh, psychoanalysis and counseling. So it has come from the ages of our Vedas and Upanishads. Even in Upanishads, Taittiriya Upanishad, it has the dialogue between Bhrigu and his father, where he gets into the identity crisis, and the model of Panchakoshas come into picture, where Bhrigu identifies the all 5 layers of existence. Then even in Kathopanishad, Nachiketa and the story of Yamadharmaraja. So there also there is again a dialogue between Nachiketa and Yamadharmaraja to explore the essence of life. So all of these already were there since very long, where uh, the nature of the mind, how to deal with it, all of it has already come into existence. Then later again, Bhagavad Gita is one such example. Yoga Vasishta is another example. So it is the most ancient.
Next question is from Mahima Ramesh. Ma'am, how can we include the counseling ideas mentioned in Gita in our clinical practice? Ma'am, can you brief it with an example?
How can we include the counseling ideas based on Gita? Okay. So, see, from Gita, specifically, Gita is about four paths of yoga. So, from the what ideas you can deduce to give the patient is, see, basically, when you assess a personality based on if he is uh, he suits into the Brahmana Varna, Vaishya Varna, or Kshatriya Varna or Shudra Varna. First, you analyze it in this perspective. Then you give the specific yoga type. Raj Yoga, you give them more about doing the Ashtanga Yoga. People with Kshatriya, Karma Yoga, you put them into service. Service with the attitude of surrendering the fruits of action. And then Bhakti Yoga, they should be practicing bhakti, bhajans, and then emotional culturing, where they are actually uh, you know uh, situations where they can invoke their emotions to a certain higher principle in their life, and where they can really connect to and open up their personality. And then Gnana Yoga, reading more and more spiritual texts about exploring who am I, or what is this existence about. So all of these are done to explore a personality through Gnana Yoga method of yoga. So with an example, in the sense, now see, if you think a person is very analytical, he's not willing to agree with something, uh, you know bhakti, karma, he sees they are very insane, not of his type. So you give him Gnana Yoga, he would do research, he would try to identify each concept, he would read a book, try to analyze it. So that is how a person would discover more about himself. So that is how you should guide the person.
Next question from Harini. We find patient with fourth stage of cancer by the history, or so how we will say as a doctor without get them panic.
No, it is not about, see, okay, you ask the person, you go in a reverse direction. Okay, why you're telling that you need to panic? Why do you think there is, you need to panic about it? Or is there any result of that panic that will translate into an effective action? This is the only, this is the only insight you need to create in the patient. Okay. And then you also need to educate the patient on what the well-being is. Even at the state of cancer, still maintaining the emotional well-being, the intellectual well-being, and overall well-being is important. That could really actually benefit the patient in recouping from the stress that the cancer is creating on the body. Okay. So see, one thing is, you should not be talking about it's okay, everybody has to die, that kind of principles you should never be talking about. Your counseling is just to give a clear picture about what is there. That is now whatever is needed for you to educate the patient. You should tell the patient that uh, what is important at this point. So it is important that you don't worsen the situation. So it is still, you still have it in your hand where you can enhance your well-being. So that is what a person given a knife can either cut his hand or nicely carve a fruit and eat. So it is, you should know on how to use that knife. So it is not about the situation, it is about the skill that you have to learn to use the instrument. Okay, so there is no contraindications for yogic counseling at all. Even at the 4th stage of cancer, you can still counsel the patient to give him to show him a greater perspective on how to improve their well-being and regress or try to stop the progress or to inhibit or to slow down the progress of the cancer. In
Next
that
question.
case, there are also advanced yogis who had lived up with cancer, but still they were never suffering with it. They were still in the state of well-being. That is very important. That is the entire thing that yoga is about.
The next question is from Mukhya P. Can we adapt CBT, EFT, TFT in our counseling?
See, you can adapt in the sense when you think that you don't have enough base to work on from your system, you can always integrate the others. But when you have a full-fledged, a very what to say, a well-packed uh, uh, package of counseling that has been mentioned throughout the text, so I don't see there is a need. But always, yeah, CBT, all the other the behavioral techniques can be adopted into the counseling system. But nothing is as deep and intricate as yogic counseling. So you can use yogic methods of diagnostics to understand a patient. And if you want to introduce some behavioral conditions or behavioral therapies, you can do it. That should be okay, and then that is absolutely okay.
Last, there is a question from Avishi ma'am. Pramana comes under Vritti, and also then why Pramana should be the ideal state. Then why Pramana should be the ideal state?
So Pramana basically is not the ultimate state, but an ideal state. So I want you to understand the difference between the ultimate and the ideal. So when given an option, you are always wanting to transform from tamas to rajas to sattva. Like that, like how sattva is the point where you want to reach, in vrittis, pramana is that point where at least you're not into the state of delusion, you're not in the state of hallucination, you're not in the state of complete indolence or sleep, or you're not even kind of caught up with your past memories. So pramana is the state where one has to aim, and from pramana again you need to evolve yourself into chitta vritti nirodha. That is yoga. That is the ultimate aim of any individual. That is chitta vritti nirodha. No vritti. Absence of vritti is the state where everybody has to try to evolve. But out of vrittis, pramana is the state that is more realistic. Yeah. So for the patient, you cannot directly expect the patient to jump into the state of chitta vritti nirodha or absence of vritti. So first you get them to the state of pramana, and then they should be given a direction where they kind of evolve into the state of chitta vritti nirodha. That's a good question, Avishi.
Last question, Kriti Mishra. How can we give yogic counseling to HIV patient? Is there any difference in the case?
Yeah. So even in HIV condition, see, basically, right, the kind of stigma and the trauma, mental trauma those people carry, that itself is enough to, especially there is a state of inflammation that is continuously happening because of the latent viruses that are there in the body, and your body is constantly trying to get out of it. So there is always a heightened state of inflammation that happens, and then there is, reduction in the state, in the levels of helper T cells. All of this is happening because there is too much of inflammation, there is too much of cortisol in your blood, and that is leading to the reduction in the helper T cells. See, that is the basic understanding that you know. But when you understand this, so it is very important for us to make the patient understand that stigma, the fear, is leading nowhere else rather than worsening the current situation. So here, the Panchakosha model lies very important, even for the previous question of fourth stage of cancer, somebody has asked, for both of it. So you need to explain the patient to see the entire picture in terms of Panchakoshas. So when you tell the patient that something could get better, definitely if you're able to handle that stress in your mind, and that stigma that you're carrying in your mind. So when you're able to bring this down, and how it translates into better physiological changes and how it is impacting their physical health should be explained to the patient. The second thing is what the stigma is all about. Okay, you need to understand what the stigma is all about. That is what you need to let the patient express about. The stigma could be of many reasons, according to their previous experiences. So really need to understand what the stigma is about, what the fear is about. So those components are very important to analyze. So the major things that you analyze in people like this, especially with lifestyle disorders and chronic diseases, is raga, dvesha, asmita, and abhinivesha. Okay, so these kleshas have to be identified and tried, and then they should be trained to overcome it. Okay, so, so basically, again, these here in HIV, fourth stage of cancer, there is lot of abhinivesha. There could be dvesha. So these components need to be addressed. So abhinivesha is basically the fear of death, the fear of their end, and then asmita is about feeling so identified with themselves that it creates stigma in them. So these things have to be analyzed in the person, and that could help you understand the state of that person well, and then you can accordingly give them better understanding.
So thank you, ma'am, to answer from first question to the last, and it covers many things. And thank you for coming on this platform with all of us. Hope we will connect in some other session in the future also. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your patient listening. I hope it was of some use. Even if you have imbibed one principle from this, it will be of a great, I would feel very happy about it, that I could teach at least one principle to you all. I'm very glad that you had been very patient listening to me throughout. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone, to attend this session. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll end this meeting.